Hey guys, so I would be what's considered either a very old millennial or very young Gen Xer. More times than not, I just identify as Gen X based on the experience I had, growing up, who I would relate to, the movies I watched, the music I listened to. So probably more Gen X than millennial. So one thing about Gen X is, I will say that makes me a little different than most Gen X people is I don't care about things being remade or redone as much as other people in my generation do. Case in point, Ghostbusters. There's this. I went and saw the original Ghostbusters in the theater. I was very, very, very young. Barely remember. It scared the hell out of me. It was a scary movie to me. I was too young to be watching that movie, but I remember going to see it. And soon after I got over the whole fear of it, I loved it. And then went and saw, so many years later, I saw Ghostbusters 2 and probably liked it more than most people. So 2016, they come with a Ghostbusters remix, probably, or not remix, a remake, and probably a little bit of just nostalgia mixed in with misogyny, and people got really angry, like, "Oh, not my Ghostbusters!" And I was like, I like all four of these actresses. They're all funny to me, and I was extremely disappointed by the 2016 Ghostbusters, and the fact that the funniest person in the movie was the technical non-comedian, and that's a problem. So anyway, but we were okay with Ghostbusters 3 Afterlife because you can bring back a franchise to Gen Xers. You just have to bring back the original actors. But if you try to reboot it, we'll lose our minds. Okay, so classic 80s movie that every Gen Xer knows, and probably millennials of a certain age, Back to the Future. Maybe even Gen Z knows Back to the Future. Everybody knows Back to the Future. Hell, it even inspired Rick and Morty, right? That These movies are crazy, and I've always realized how these movies, but I've always realized they were crazy. But today, I was thinking of about making a video about First Contact, the Star Trek movie, and I was thinking about time travel. So of course my mind went to Back to the Future, and I started thinking about time travel in that movie. And holy funk, this movie is completely bananas. The implications of this movie. So I'm going to have to let me just show you to explain. Okay, so what I've decided to do is go to my document camera, draw a picture, and get some explanation of what's going on in this movie and why it's so confusing and crazy. So you're also going to see how bad I am at drawing. So we start at 1985. You have Doc, you have Marty. The DeLorean goes back to 1955 by a bit of an accident. So Doc is stuck in 1985, but it's Marty who goes back to 1955. 1955 is significant because that's the night that Doc had an epiphany about the flux capacitor thing, that which would allow time travel to happen. So Doc at least has an understanding, or at least a basic idea of the possibility of time travel. So he goes back there. The only problem is that as soon as Marty goes back, his parents are there. And this is a 1985 Michael J. Fox. So his mom's looking at him and being like, "Oh man, I want to get with my own son," even though she doesn't know it's her own son. It's either him or a 1985 Crispin Glover, which is kind of like a 2023 Crispin Glover. Not a bad looking dude, but just kind of weird, right? So by doing that, Marty is creating an alternate timeline where in this timeline, there's no Marty. So Marty, getting into the affairs of his parents, are making it where he will cease to exist. All right. So he has to make sure that his parents meet. Now, the antagonist of this is a guy named Biff, who is an ARPist. I don't want to say the word, but he's an ARPist, which is kind of weird later on, but I'll talk about that. So he's creating this timeline where he starts to disappear. He's beginning to literally fade away from the time altogether. So he has to work, and he has to do two things. One, he has to figure out how to get back into his back to 1985, because of course, if you've seen the movie, you know that, yeah, sure, the car runs on unleaded fuel. That's not a problem. But the time travel device requires plutonium. All right. So they use lightning magic, blah, blah, blah. He manages to get his parents to stay together. or to hook up like they were going to anyway. Now, here's the thing: in the original timeline, his parents, his father's, it wasn't the science fiction writer he wanted to be. His families are kind of losers. Okay, so when he goes back, when he does go back to 1985, instead of going back to this 1985, he goes to an alternate 1985, right? In this alternate 1985, there is a Marty, but his parents aren't losers. So here's the thing. Okay, so in of itself, you're already getting kind of weird here because okay, there's several things here. One, he goes back. His mom is into him and even kisses him, and she's like, it's like kissing my brother, which was kind of funny. But all right, I'm about the age that his parents are in 1985, right? I'm a little younger than they would be. If someone popped up like my sophomore, junior, or senior year in college, and I had all this interaction with them and made out with them, I think I would remember them. So you have this kid, and you slowly notice that your kid looks more and more like the guy that your wife made out with and came in your life. I would start thinking, wait a minute, what were you doing? Whatever. But then the other thing is, if he went back in that time, and he's in this timeline where he exists and his parents or parents aren't losers, I should say. Well, here's the thing. So they had him. He lives in that time. He lives in that time. This is the new timeline. He fixed everything, right? Wait a minute. So he's been alive this whole time. Wait a minute. Then where is he? Like when he shows up at the house, are there two Martys? That doesn't make any sense, right? That's already, it's whatever. Makes no sense. The other thing is plot wise, you've got Biff. He's still around. Biff was the guy who was the Oropus who tried to, push up on Marty's mom. And he's still around, but now he's like this cucked, beta dude. And they're just like, now, come on. Marty's father, like, now, come on, Biff, you need to clean my car. And I'm just like, dude, this guy tried to assault. He didn't try. He kind of did assault your wife, and you keep him around. So, but that's something I'll look. It was the 80s. You had assault and casual racism, homophobia. It was the 80s. Okay, you live with it. All right. I mean, one movie alone had it all. Revenge of the Nerds, whatever. Right. But here, this makes no sense. None of this makes sense. But let's just go with it. We'll say that we have these rules of time travel. Well, guess what? The way the rules of time travel go is that you can create these alternate timelines. And sure, it doesn't make that much sense, but yeah, well, we'll just go with it. Whatever, right? Sure, okay, and okay, sure. Back to the Future 1. There you go. That's how that works. Okay, so that's the first one, right? Now the second one is even crazier because at least in the first one, like we're going back in time, and then he's trying to get into the Back to the Future, which is that's the name of the movie. But then the second one goes like we're going to go into the future. Woo! Now the implications of time travel in this one. Let's look at this. So now we're at Back to the Future 2, and this is when it gets really insane, like total batshit. So the movie starts out, Marty picks up right where the first one left off, and Doc shows, Marty, we've got to go to the future. We got to save your kids, right? So, Marty's like, okay, Doc. So they go to 2015, all right? So they jump to 2015, they, whatever. They go to the future, and in this future, Marty's married to his high school sweetheart, beautiful. And he has two kids who look just like him. It's really weird, but we'll forget that. So his parents are still alive, but Biff is still alive in 2015. Now, whatever happens here, it doesn't matter. The interesting thing that happens is that Biff goes back to 2015, or goes from 2015 to 1955. So this is Biff. Biff's still giving people problems. I don't even know if that's how he spells his name. We'll call Biff, B-I-F-F. Sure, why not? So he goes back and he gives his past self a sports almanac from the future, so his past self can like gamble and be rich. So now what's happened is that Biff has created an alternate timeline,
And in this alternate timeline, Biff has made tons of money gambling and is basically Donald Trump, except worse. Believe it or not, he's like a worse version of Donald Trump. And everybody's saying, really, you would say it, you live. Look, man, Robert Zemeckis said that he based the character off of Donald Trump. That's not me, that's him. So we have this alternate 1985. Now here's the funky thing. This is the first of all, this is the first stupid thing. So Biff gives himself the sports almanac in 1955. Then he goes to 2015. He has to, because he has to return the DeLorean. Otherwise, Doc and Marty are stuck here and the movie ends. So Biff goes, and then he goes back to 2015, and he goes to 2015 in this timeline. No, wrong, wrong. Even though Biff created an alternate timeline, for some reason, when he goes to the future, he jumps back to this. That doesn't make any sense. He's already created an alternate timeline. Shouldn't he go to this one? And then some people, well, I've heard the whole thing. If you watch the movie, Biff comes out of the car and he's in pain. And they're like, well, he's in pain because he's being erased from that. Well, actually, there was a deleted scene where Biff got shot. And that's why in the cane broke and whatever. But let's say he is being erased. That's still okay. I guess that's a little bit whatever. But why would he? That still doesn't explain why he would jump to this timeline. It makes absolutely no sense. But here, it gets to something even a little. So another thing. This is like, so what happens? What happens? For some reason, even though they're in 2015 and they're in this timeline, they go back to 1985 after he's like, Marty, we need to save your kids. And he saved the kids. So they go back to the original timeline? No, somehow they jump to this timeline down here, down to this timeline. So Biff goes to 1955, jumps back to the 2015 he came from, the unaltered timeline. Well, so this is Biff right here. This is Biff. Oh, okay. But then when Marty and Doc jump from 2015 back to 1985, instead of going to this timeline, I'm like, no, asshole. They're not going to that one. They're going to the alternate. That makes absolutely no sense. What's going on here? And then to make it even crazier, here's the thing. So they go back to this. He went very changed, but even with this alternate timeline that they go to, where Marty and Doc go to this timeline, for some reason, okay, Marty's parents still got together, and Marty was made. And then there's 1985 Marty. So thinking about the last movie, are there two Martys in here? Because in the movie, Biff kind of casually mentions he should be in a boarding school in Europe. I don't think they even cared at this point. I don't even, matter of fact, let's talk about, I'll just go and talk about, Back to the Future 3 real quick. Why not? Back to the Future 3, they don't care. They just like, F it, man. Look, we're done. Mary Steenburgen. He's like, Doc's like, I don't care, dude. I'm finally getting some. I'm good. I got a magic train. I got 2 kids. I got a weird kid who points to his groin. If you don't get that reference, watch it. At the end of the movie, Back to the Future 3, a weird kid, his son is pointing to his groin. Maybe he had to pee. I don't know. But there you go. This is our sacred movie. Love this movie, but come on. Anyway.
Okay. So then the third one. So the third one doesn't have all the crazy time travel that the other ones. As a matter of fact, the third one is kind of just a redo of the first one, except now instead of being in 1955, he's in 1885, and instead of the time traveling component, the flux capacitor not working, it's now the car, the engine itself, because the engine uses unleaded gas and they don't have unleaded gas. So we got Mr. Fusion. We don't have the problem with the nuclear reactor anymore. We just have to figure out how to get this car up to 88 miles per hour. Okay. Now, at the end of this movie, Doc Brown just says, Marty, forget about it all. You write the future. And he flies off in his train and whatever. And I guess he's just like, Marty, I've been trying to preserve the timeline. And he's just like, I don't care. I've got, a 1989 Mary Steenburgen. I don't care, which... I mean, if I had a 1989 Mary Steenburgen, I probably wouldn't care about keeping the timeline clean. Actually, if I had a 2023 Mary Steenburgen, I probably wouldn't care about keeping the timeline clean either. But he just says, F it, I don't even care. The movie is insane. All 3 of these movies are completely bananas. So here's the thing. Christopher Lloyd is 84. I'm not sure how old Michael J. Fox is now, but he has Parkinson's, unfortunately. We're not getting a Back to the Future 4 with these two individuals. I wish them best of luck. They're two of my they created three of my favorite movies growing up. So I wish them all the best, and I look forward to seeing Christopher Lloyd in more movies. Great to see him in Nobody. I hope to see him in more things. That being said, go ahead and reboot the movie. It's okay. Just go ahead and reboot the movie. Is it this sacred thing that we can't touch? Guys, go back and watch the movie. It's an entertaining movie. It's a funny movie. It's a whatever premise. But it's okay to go to get this and just reboot it, redo it. If you look at the movie's insane. It's not, I mean, I think what we do is we kind of look back at it and we put it up on this pedestal and we say it's whatever. And it was an entertaining movie. All right, but the shit is insane. I mean, look, the time travel stuff, although it's not consistent, the heart of the story is, and I can't remember who the screenwriter, the writer of the screenplay was. I know Robert Zemeckis directed, but I don't think he came up with this concept. Is all they wanted to do was say, hey, this is the story. The writer of the screenplay was flipping through his dad's notebook or yearbook, and he saw a picture of his dad, and he noticed that his dad was a member of all these clubs, and his dad was handsome and da-da-da. And he's like, I'm this weird nerd in high school. If I were to go back and meet my father, would we have gotten along? And that was kind of what inspired him. The original time travel device, it was not a car. It was not the DeLorean. The idea was they were going, and this is interesting, if I remember this correctly, and see if this sounds familiar. They were going to get into a refrigerator and then set off a nuclear explosion, and that was what was going to instigate the time travel. Think about that. Now, all I'm going to say is, here's the thing. Robert Zemeckis, Steven Spielberg, and George Lucas, they're all friends. Getting into a refrigerator, setting off a nuclear explosion, surviving it, that's how you travel back in time. Doesn't that sound familiar? So anyway, if they want to do Back to the Future remake or reboot or whatever, as an official spokesperson of Gen X, I say do it, and I'll be there opening night to watch it. Thank you.